Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's AANA Forum. My name is John Broom. I'm the CEO of the AANA, and I'm hosting today's event. It's great to see so many people attending today. And before we get into the topic, allow me to unashamedly promote next Friday's webinar, which is called The Marketer of the Future, How to Set Yourself Up for Success in this ever-changing world of ours. The invites have gone out for that, so please don't hesitate to register. We'll be picking the brains of some very smart people, of which one is a CEO, two others will be CMOs, and intriguingly, we've also brought on board a headhunter to give us their insights. So I'm sure we're going to get some very, very interesting perspectives. Alistair Simpson from Blackmores will be joining us, as will Lisa Bacon from the ABC. Ben Hill, CMO of Mars, and Kate Ferguson from Horrigan International. And that's next Friday at 11 o'clock. But now to today's webinar, which is focused on connected TV and what it means for marketers' investment choices going forward. Two events prompted the AANA to focus on this topic. Firstly, we have all seen, if not participated in, the recent explosion of CTV content consumption that has occurred due to the pandemic. Now, audiences were clearly growing before COVID, but they have really taken off since. So what are consumers and audiences telling us, and what opportunities does this pose for us as marketers going forward? And secondly, and in very, very timely fashion, our friends at the IAB published a report on connected TV, which is available to you all via the IAB website. Similar to a UK IAB report, this is a really informative, detailed source on all things CTV, and I really do encourage you to have a look at it. CTV is perhaps more complicated than linear TV, and I encourage you to get up to speed with all the facets of CTV. The report will take you through all the definitions and terminology, take you through the reach and targeting aspects of CTV, addressability, personalization, how to plan CTV, and of course, the big topic of measurement, which we'll cover off today as well. So these two events came together as an excellent reason to dig deeper and ask a panel of experts in this field to tell us more with the primary goal of enabling you to dig deeper and further your own education. So allow me to introduce the experts who are with me today. Again, we've been very deliberate in getting a cross-section of views, a buyer's perspective from the media agency, a user's perspective from the senior CMO, and of course, the supply side's perspective from the programmatic supply side of CTV. So allow me to introduce you, and I'm not sure which side of the screen they're on for you. To my left, to my right is Christian Kroon, Chief Investment Officer of OMG. Josh Grace, CMO from Samsung. Juliet Stead from Magnite. Juliet is the SVP for the APAC region. And James Bays, the General Manager ANZ for Trade Desk. So welcome everybody. Shortly, I'll be asking each of our presenters to take 5 minutes each and give us their perspective on what CTV means for marketers and how we should look to the opportunities and indeed some of the challenges that CTV presents for us. This is just as much about today as it is actually tomorrow. Following this, I will then dig deeper into some of the topics and issues that have been raised. It's not all a good news story, and there's obviously a lot still evolving, but we need to explore what's not working as equally as what is. I also encourage the audience to give me your questions at this point via the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. I will do my best to capture as many of them as possible into my questions as well. But before I ask Christian to kick off, let me share 3 or 4 charts which were kindly donated by the IAB, just to give us a little bit of a starter on some of the data. So hopefully you can all see that now. That's sweet. So I think it goes without saying that CTV is not just about one screen, it's across multiple screens. And as you can see there, the biggest screen is of course mobile. but connected TV or smart TV is a significant proportion of that. And that particularly intrigues me as a marketer, because when I think about some of the empirical research that's been done around attention and screen size, then that's an obvious point of interest for us all. This is a demonstration early on in the pandemic, I have to say, around the explosion in connected TV audience. And as you can see, just up to the end of March, there was almost a quarter increase in that audience. And I'm sure when the IAB issue their next set of figures, it's going to be another increase on top of that. So these are big numbers, and the question is this an opportunity for personalization at scale? And then when we look at viewing via smart TV, you can see that the vast majority of it is on that top line there, 77%. But the important thing here is that there's many different access points to connected TV, which again makes our life as marketers that little bit more complex. So I thought I'd just share those, and what I'll do now is just go back to the presenters and basically start off, I think, by directing a question for Christian and hand over for his 5 minutes. So Christian, media agencies obviously play a vital role in advising their clients on choices. What are you telling them about connected TV?
Thank you, John. Hello, everyone. With connected televisions, I think where a lot of the questions start is this television and I need to view it through that lens, or is it digital and I need to view it through that lens? Because they're different paths, different budgets. And our view is it's distinct, the behaviour is distinct, and what you're seeing is a merging of television and digital. So then what do we tell them? Your slide shows that already consumers have moved to that. And I think most of us will have a connected television in our homes and we'll be seeing different behaviour. I would say we're very conscious of not overselling where we are today, particularly when it comes to measurement, which I know we'll come on to. That there are new opportunities, there's new layers within the relationship. So manufacturers, which I know Joss is going to talk about, are part of the ecosystem and part of the opportunity. We're seeing new ad formats. And I think most importantly for today, cross-screen convergence is something that marketeers need, agencies have to deliver. Connected televisions is a really big step forward in that. You can start to look at what's going on with YouTube as it is with BVOD, as it is with maybe watching live sport. A single device like the connected television really is a massive step forward for us to connect that together and give that single measurement and effectiveness that we've struggled to do to date because of so many different parts of the tech supply chain for mobile, tablet and television previously. Oh, John, I think we've got you on mute.
Yeah, sorry, mate. I'll do that. Thanks very much, Christian. Thanks for that. We'll obviously come back to you with some penetrating questions later on. I have to say thank you to Christian because he's actually on holiday at the moment, and the reason why he's sitting in a car is to escape the kids who are running around the house. So very, very, very clever. So I'm going to go to Josh now, and I was actually very deliberate in asking Josh along today because clearly Josh can give us his thoughts, from a chief marketing officer perspective. But secondly, Samsung are obviously, selling many of these smart TVs that we have in our homes today. And I'm particularly interested in understanding as well where the technology is going and how that will, serve to increase audiences over time. So, Josh, over to you.
Thanks, John. Well, let me start by saying that from a marketing point of view, I don't think TV has ever died. I think we've also been a bit distracted by that shiny new digital toy. And I suspect those that have sort of over the last 10 years continued to focus on and believe in the power of brand and emotive storytelling have actually done pretty well for themselves. And those that have kind of got caught up chasing faux measurements of effectiveness around last click and first click attribution have probably been going around and around in circles. So all that we're seeing right now is a re-emergence of the importance of TV and a recognition that actually it's still a really effective medium. And so that's my perspective from a marketing perspective. And the three reasons I believe that fundamentally are, first of all, we are a really lazy race of people who can't be bothered making decisions on any rational basis. We'll go on emotion and gut feel. All the system 1, system 2, marketing science supports that. And so, we need to connect emotionally with our customers. Second, there's no better medium than video or film to do that with. It's the medium that actually elicits the greatest emotional response because of the combination of, moving pictures and sound. And so whether it's cinema, TV or online, they're still the killer mediums that you need to have in your marketing mix to emotionally connect and convert your customers. And we see that at Samsung. We see a very strong and clear correlation between the use of video, so whether it's TV, cinema, or online video, and the organic branded search that we get. And that's because I don't have the ability to close the loop with my sales channel. That's actually what I look for. Am I actually driving an increase in people considering our brand and products? And we definitely see the correlation when we use those medium. And the third reason why I think TV never died is because of what we've outlined in the IAB report. That experience of watching it on TV actually has a substantive impact compared to watching it on a small handheld device. So it's that combination of the full screen impact. Even now, I'd say the ability to fill the room with cinematic sound has a much greater impact for your advertising than just watching it on a mobile phone, potentially just in the half of the screen on a YouTube video. So you need to weigh all these things together when you're looking at your marketing plan. And for my team at Samsung, we've got two really simple rules that we just focus on now. First of all, we've got to make our message better than our competitors. And then we need more people to see it than our competitors. It's as simple as that, right? Creative impact and share of voice. They're the two things we look for. So TV is still the channel that I guess reaches the most people in the most cost-effective way. And, connected TV is just enabling that and I guess starting to repair some of the loss that's happened in the last few years. But I think it is important to recognise, like, TV hasn't been perfect. Linear TV in particular has had its frustrations, its limitations. The ads come on, you get up, you go to the bathroom, you make a cup of tea, maybe too much of a window into my life. And as well as that, what I just spoke about before, the audiences have drifted away. And so at that point, some of the merit of TV gets diluted. And obviously, it's not to say that digital isn't important as well, it is. Online video started to look like a great alternative in that space because now you could start to measure. You could see whether people had actually watched your ad or not. You didn't know whether, in the past, we didn't know if they got up and went to the bathroom. But online's got its own challenges as well. So, you can skip the ad. There's all these different ways that it also has its own area of loss. And that's where I think connected TV starts to become important because what it does is it starts to bridge the benefits of that impact, creative impact and storytelling that linear TV had with the measurability and, the ability to measure and even to frequency cap. Because one of the biggest wastes of our media is frequency. We can't control it across all the different channels. So connected TV starts to enable this to a degree. I wouldn't, again, say it's perfect. I'd also say we should treat this as still as an emerging opportunity. We're not in a mature market yet, but I think we are getting mass penetration now. The figure of 6.6 million homes is getting to a fairly sizable penetration of the market. I don't think we've imported a dumb TV, as it were, since 2015, and I'm pretty sure our competitors wouldn't have either. And let's assume that on average, people are upgrading a TV every 7 years. So that means by 2022, we should have pretty well put a smart TV into every home. But that's replacement cycles in an average year. And this is not an average year by any stretch. The TV category sales this year have gone through the roof. Just again, if I talk about our organic branded search data, because I can't talk to sales specifically, but we're 47% up year on year on search for our products, for TVs in particular. And I think that's driven by, people are cocooning. They want the TVs suddenly become a much more important part of the home. And also things like you can't go to the cinema anymore. So you want that cinematic experience. And, Netflix has had its biggest movie ever on the platform in this period. But I think that's partly Chris Hemsworth. The other thing that's happening from now, starting to talk from a manufacturer perspective, is we're also starting to drive the next evolution in the category. So it's not just about smart TV anymore. It's about the evolution from being just a big black box on the wall to actually being an extension of your lifestyle. And so what I mean by that is we're creating TVs for different moments in your life. So whether it's the frame, which turns into art when it's off, so that you don't have that big black box on the wall, or the Serif, which actually is a design statement in its own right and can sit amongst design furniture quite beautifully, or the Cero, which is an interesting one, which is actually a TV designed to share mobile content on. And if you have your mobile phone vertical, the TV rotates vertical. If you turn your phone horizontal, the TV rotates horizontal. And so suddenly you've got means by which digital video suddenly becomes connected TV. We've even got the Terrace now, which is an outdoor TV. It's dust, resistant, water resistant. And I watched The Bachelor in Paradise last night with my daughter over TV on the fridge. So connected TV is now coming into more rooms. So you're going to see growth beyond just one TV in the house to multiple TVs in the house, which is more eyeballs, more opportunities to connect with different people in the household. So another phase of evolution for you to think about. So I think TVs are well. Connected TV offers some really interesting opportunities for us. And I think it's important to delineate the types of advertising opportunity on there. And, I really would leave it to Christians of the world to get the advice on what's right for you as a marketer. But from my perspective, you've still got the traditional linear feed. You can still access that on a smart TV. You can then access the BVOD, like Channel 7, 9, 10 or SBS's broadcast app and then start to get the connected advertisements served programmatically to you. And maybe the thing that people don't understand as well is now Samsung is offering also an advertising unit within the universal menu. So before you even go into Netflix or Stan or 7 or 9, there is actually now an ad unit that sits in that universal menu. And that's a pretty interesting opportunity, but also one that we're treating extremely carefully, because if you've just bought a $10,000 8K 75-inch smart TV, I don't think you want to see a dog food ad appear in your menu. So really that opportunity from our perspective at the moment is more about content discovery. If you're Disney, if you're Apple TV, Amazon, Stan, any of these guys, or 7, 9 or 10, and you've got a great new programming that you want people to discover amongst all those options that are now in that menu, then that's probably a great opportunity to focus on. If you're a normal advertiser, an FMCG or someone like that, I don't think the relevance of the environment's right for you. And it might change over time as we get used to that being in the environment, but from my perspective, it's more about really relevant messages on content discovery. So that's my point of view.
Great, thanks very much, Josh. And that's a really good segue into some of Juliet's topic areas, which I'm particularly interested in: programmatic and the addressability aspects of CTV. Will CTV, for example, deliver the nirvana of personalization and scale? Juliet, over to you.
Thanks very much. I feel like we've already covered off quite a lot in a very short period of time, don't you? So I'm just going to give you some context around where I work and who I am, because that should hopefully make this make more sense. So I work for a business called Magnite, and we are a supply-side platform. We're a global business. In fact, we have only just rebranded as Magnite. It's the coming together of Talaria and Rubicon Project. And we merged back in March and we rebranded a couple of weeks ago. And you might have seen lots of very bright colours splashed all over the place to represent our new brand. But essentially what we do, we work with multiple publishers across the world to make them successful. So we help to surface their supply so that it can then be bought by brands who are using a DSP such as the Trade Desk, and so that whole trade can happen really effectively and really efficiently. From an Australia perspective, we work with 7, 9, 10, SBS, Foxtel. In New Zealand, and I believe we've got a few people joining us today from New Zealand, we work with TVNZ and MediaWorks. So essentially, the whole point of what we do is making sure that the trade can happen effectively, and so that we're bringing in all of the data points that need to be brought in so that the right decisions can be made using data and using technology. I think I just want to revert back to something that somebody said, and I can't remember who it was at the beginning of the call. Somebody said connected TV is complicated. It depends on who you are. from an audience perspective, it's not complicated. It's just TV. You're just watching your favourite TV shows. And in fact, it's almost more simple because you get to be completely in control of what programme you watch and when and on what device. So in my mind, I think we've got to make sure we're constantly looking at this from a consumer perspective, as well as also recognising all of the quirks that we need to recognise from a sort of industry perspective to make sure that we're doing everything properly. In terms of how we then surface connected TV, so as a platform, we service a huge amount of data points within what we call a bid request. So when somebody has clicked play to watch a show, we will then say, okay, there's an ad opportunity. We're going to tell the demand side platform, such as the Trade Desk, about this particular ad opportunity, and they can make a decision around whether or not they want to buy this particular impression. So that information might tell you about the name of the show, the domain, the URL, whether it's 9Now, for example, the name of that particular episode, the name of the series, potentially even the content rating, whether it's PG rated, for example. And we'll surface all of this information so that we can, including an ID, and that's actually very important from a connected TV perspective because there are no cookies. And so you need an ID in order to recognise what the opportunity looks like, whether you've seen this person before or not, and whether you want to actually put your ad impression in front of that person. And we surface all of that information so that the buyer can make the right decision and decide whether or not to put that ad in front of that particular person in that particular environment against that particular piece of content. So I just think worth kind of covering off a few of those points. In terms of addressability, in my mind, addressability is all around being able to put a specific ad in front of a person as opposed to the more traditional way of positioning TV advertising, which was more around, you know, ratings and contextual placements. You can still do contextual. So connected TV still allows you to put your ads against specific shows that you know are going to index well against specific audiences. You can still do that. But in addition to that, you can also leverage data to target at an impression level. And that's one of the things that we've been doing at significant scale. In fact, over the past 12 months, we've doubled the investment that we've seen from addressable TV advertising through connected TV. So the data points that are often leveraged often come from first-party registration data. So when it comes to the broadcasters across Australia and New Zealand, there is a consistent strategy to drive towards more and more registered users so that that data can be used to inform buyers around whether or not they want to target that particular audience. And that's been getting, that's gained a lot of traction. It's being used more and more frequently. So we've seen about double. So when it comes to addressability, my view really is, of course, the right messages need to go in front of the right audience. But the last thing that we want to do is do that to the extent where you're only actually able to target 5 people. You know, with that just doesn't work. You've got to make sure that you're benefiting from the experience of TV that we all know. We know that TV does really well for brands because of engaging content, scale, reach, professionally produced, curated content that's going to have a really positive impact on brands. We've got to make sure that addressability doesn't then become counterintuitive to all the benefits that we've seen traditionally from TV. So in my mind, addressability is great, but don't do too much of it too soon. You know, BVOD is doing really well, and we've seen incredible increases in audiences, but it still obviously isn't on par with linear broadcast audiences when it comes to scale. So my recommendation when it comes to addressability is do it wherever it's going to add significant value. Don't do it too much. Don't do it to the point where you haven't been able to achieve the scale that you need to achieve in order to make your brand famous, and do it across multiple environments as opposed to just one environment that's just against, you know, Telstra TV, for example, within connected TV, within one particular program against females that are 16 to 18 years of age. That's just going to diminish your opportunity for reach and scale. So it's all about balance in my mind, using addressable opportunities, but also being able to achieve reach and scale. Any questions on that, or does that sound like a good introduction to the topic?
Don't worry, Julia. We're going to come back with some meaty questions shortly. But first, I'd like to throw to James. James, you know, as a DSP, I'm particularly interested in, you know, the obvious question that many marketers in the audience will have around measurement and effectiveness. But please go broader than that. But over to you.
Yeah, thanks, John. I guess a quick introduction to the Trade Desk, just so people understand the angle that I'm coming at from here and what a demand-side platform is. So the Trade Desk works solely on the buy side of the market, which means that our singular focus is helping agencies and brands to improve the effectiveness of their digital marketing investments. And we do that by helping them to identify, very simply, the right audience at the right time, in the right place, on the right device, in order to achieve whatever their campaign and brand goals might be. And connected TV, without question, is the fastest growing part of our business. And given that we work with some of the biggest sort of household brands around the world, if it's a big part of our business, then it's a really a big part of our clients' business. And as I said, it's absolutely the fastest growing sort of part of the market. And we talked before, and we, John, you shared some stats which sort of support the notion that CTV is, growing sort of super quickly. It's becoming increasingly mainstream. 6.3 million people sort of viewing connected TV every day, 20% growth year on year. Like the BVOD market itself was about $130 million market last year. It's without question the fastest growing advertising market in the country. It'll probably be in the realms of $170, $180 million this year. So it's, yes, it's still small in terms of the total overall television market, but it is growing phenomenally quickly. And from an audience perspective, depending upon the demographics and audiences that you're buying against, BVOD can represent anywhere between sort of 5 and 15% genuinely incremental reach on top of your linear TV campaign. So, for us at the Trade Desk, like we talk about fundamentally believing in a future where all media is delivered over the internet at some point in time, whether that's in 5, 10 or 15 years. So, if it's 5 to 15% in incremental reach right now, turn the lights out of me.
Pay the bill, mate.
If it was 5 to 15% incremental reach at the moment, that's going to be 15% next year and 20% the year after and 50% in 5 years' time. So, that's not something that the networks in any way need to be fearful of. And, I can kind of speak from personal experience with that. I spent 3 years at the Seven Network leading their addressable TV business before I joined the Trade Desk. And, we really talked a lot about our business as being total video rather than television. So really that's kind of the holistic view of linear TV and BVOD like coming together. And I think that's a really important lens to look at things through. And, we believe like at the Trade Desk, like that when all media is delivered over the internet, like I said before, media is just done better and everybody wins out of that. So, consumers get a more personalized experience, brands get a more targeted campaign, more effective campaign, more measurable campaign, and publishers get better recognized for the great content that they're creating and the audiences that they're scaling because they're able to monetize their inventory more effectively because brands are getting better results from it. So, but I think the really important piece there, bringing this back to measurement is that there's still no way to build reach like linear TV. But as CTV audiences scale, it's really important for us to start to merge those two conversations together. And I kind of look at this period that we're in at the moment as it's like the almost awkward teenage years where we're not all linear and we're not all digital. We're not a kid, we're not an adult. But eventually we're going to be like, it's all going to be delivered over the internet. It's all going to be delivered over IP. And in a lot of respects, that's a hell of a lot simpler because we know how to do that. But over the next sort of 5 to 10 years, we need to come up with the tools to be able to navigate that cross-screen world more effectively so that we're not planning these two things in isolation and not planning them, in separate buckets. So I think when we talk about measurement, firstly, it's really important to highlight the difference between media measurement and performance measurement. And then secondly, between content measurement and campaign measurement. From a content measurement perspective, like if you're measuring the reach of a program and how many people are watching that, I think OzTam have done a really great job in building a currency for audience measurement on BVOD. So, without throwing out sort of too many acronyms, the measurement currency for BVOD is called VPM, which is the OzTam currency for BVOD. And VPM captures census level data, as all broadcasters have put an SDK into all of their streaming apps that tracks, everything, every stream start, every program watched, how long the session runs for, what programs are being viewed, how long for. And because a lot of people are logging into those devices, they've got a lot of information about, who's logging in, who's watching that stuff. So, as I said, that VPN currency measures all streaming on all devices, on all BVOD services, and it's an audited implementation. So is actually incredibly robust and accurate when it comes to content measurement. But at the end of the day, one of the great advantages I think of BVOD that BVOD has over linear TV is the ability to link directly to actual brand outcomes. So for us, and that's not saying that linear TV doesn't deliver amazing results, and absolutely it does, but buying through a platform like the Trade Desk, you can measure the impact of your campaign on things like brand uplift, driving search behavior, traffic through to your website, or tracking through to lead generation or sales. And I think it was Josh that said a moment ago, it's the bringing together of all the great stuff about CTV brings together the great stuff about TV, the incredible immersive storytelling environment, the captive viewing experience with the targeting and measurability of digital. So it's kind of bringing those two sort of great worlds together. The big piece of work that's going on in measurement at the moment is, as I said before, we've really got to crack this, the code of, stopping, measurement conversations from being a linear conversation and a digital conversation, and starting to break down those two things. OzTam's done a lot of work in that space, and a lot of people on the line sort of may have heard of VOZ, which is designed to be the industry-led currency to measure cross-screen audience behaviour. At the Trade Desk, and I think we're all looking forward to that when it comes out. But at the Trade Desk, we're doing a lot of work on that as well. So we've done a partnership with a company called Samba, which integrates directly into the chipset of a lot of smart television manufacturers to help understand what viewing is taking place on that screen. And what we're then able to do is to actually use the information that comes from Samba. It's all opted in user data. But use that information that comes from Samba which shows us linear television exposure data to inform your digital video buying strategies. So we're taking linear TV data and then informing who we want to target and what we want to buy on digital video, so that we're getting the best of both worlds coming together. So that cross-screen measurement piece, I think, is a really big challenge, but there's a huge amount of time and effort going in right across the industry to solve it.
Great, thanks, James. That's, the integration of traditional and CTV, really interesting perspective. I did like your analogy of teenage years, because it does feel that we do still have some growing pains. I'm going to throw to Christian in a moment, but picking up a question that has been raised on the Q&A is, obviously the obvious one around frequency capping, and, seeing the same ad over and over again, in BVOD or whatever. Christian, to what degree, and I'll throw this open to everyone, but let's start with Christian, to what degree have we got to go through a few more growing pains yet, and hence, how do we approach that?
I think we've got a lot of growing pains, like any teenager, which might be a window into my world, to borrow from Josh. And this is the thing, what we've done is we've got very different behaviour, which is a merger of TV and digital. But to date, we've used legacy digital solutions to try and capture a lot of that. And we've only just started to crack reach and frequency. We're only just starting, and we work with Trade Desk a lot. We've done some great solutions with them around transparency of what you're buying, not just how you plan reach and frequency, but then the post analysis. And I think we are kind of stuck in a middle zone at the moment of traditional digital planning is just not as robust as TV previously. Television hasn't had the benefit of all the data signals. How do you make that better for this new consumer experience? But also, I think you kind of have to, from the client's perspective, what am I benchmarking this off? That's that measurement piece. Is it linear TV? Is it my BVOD buy? what's the cost I'm paying? What can I do today? Most people are buying connected TV, whether they realise it or not. What can my agency tell me? Some of the things James has talked about, you've been able to do for a while. Some stuff is very new. I think what we're very conscious of, due to some of the issues that have happened in digital, particularly programmatic over the last few years, is not to oversell where we stand. I think everyone can see the long-term future, and it goes back to that, what can be done at scale today, to Juliet's point, what's coming in 6 months, what's coming in a year. VOZ has obviously been mentioned. That I've always said we applaud the TV networks for what they've done with OzTAM, but it's over a year late. That shows how difficult it is just when you're doing linear television and BVOD. And we haven't even really talked about how can you bring YouTube and Google's information and Facebook's information as two walled gardens into this conversation to really achieve that cross-screen convergence play. Lots and lots of moving parts, and we haven't even talked about the fact that some of the TV manufacturers also offer a new opportunity in terms of what they can bring to the table. So for me, you go back to what's the fundamentals, how are we going to measure what we're doing, what do we know today, because you probably are buying connected televisions, and then how do we step that forward in a very clear empirical plan, if you like, and valuation, and never ever overselling the dream. And if someone tells you it's in a black box or non-disclosed, it would be sending alarm bells off for me. The other big one for us is US case studies. There's a lot of US case studies around connected televisions. It's a fundamentally different market, and generally those case studies just do not translate across when we've looked deeply into it.
So avoid black boxes, avoid US case studies. Still quite a way to go. Juliet, over to you.
Sorry, I'd just like to pick up on the frequency capping conversation as well, because I think the initial question was around frequency within a stream. So if you're sitting there watching a show, how do you essentially prevent your ad from appearing too many times within that show? Okay, so this is actually, it's kind of this was a teething problem early on. It's something that has actually been resolved as long as you're working with the right tech partners. So if you actually see an ad appearing too many times, it's honest truth, I might be from a sales background, you might notice this, but back in the day there weren't any consistent identifiers when it came to connected TV, but there's been a huge amount of work done by IAB Tech Labs, for example, to standardize IFAs when it comes to connected TV. Essentially, if there isn't an IFA that's being passed through, we're able to synthesize an ID so we can pass through. It's essentially a combination of user agent and IP address that allows for a DSP to recognize that particular device. So essentially, frequency capping absolutely is available as long as the right technology, so we know what we're doing, the likes of the trade desk know how to then work with that identifier so that frequency capping can absolutely be implemented accurately, consistently, however the brand has decided they want to set up their frequency capping, essentially can be done. You just have to take a different approach when you're setting it up in a connected TV environment versus, say, a short form video environment where you would only have one pre-roll to one bit of content. We've got full ad breaks, we've got multiple ad breaks within a stream, and so it's a very different approach. And in addition to that, just to give you some context around why it was a teething problem and it wasn't particularly straightforward, when it comes to connected TV, a lot of the ads are pre-fetched. So somebody goes to click to watch a program and all of the ads are fetched up front, and then they get embedded into the content, they get stitched into the content so that you've got a much better user experience. But with that comes some problems when it comes to traditional frequency capping methodology. So I'm not going to go into it in too much detail. Essentially, it was a difficult thing to deal with at first. And we've been doing it for ages. We've fixed it. As long as you've got the right partners, it's totally feasible and it's not a problem.
I've got a question. I've got a question here. Sorry, from the audience around. Is there an optimum frequency across BVOD for brand awareness? I guess the other question would be: do you use CTV for saliency stroke brand awareness building?
Well, if you use TV for brand building, then you use connected TV for brand building because it is just TV. In terms of optimal frequency capping, I think that's probably more of a question for James and Christian. I do more of the supply stuff. You guys probably see more of the back-end results stuff from an advertiser perspective.
James?
I I think it's very difficult to say that there's one answer for all brands in all situations. Like, at the end of the day, are you talking about there's so many different considerations, and the same considerations for linear TV. Are you running a 15 or a 30? Is it an established brand or a new brand? Like, so many things that kind of feed into that decision. It's very difficult to, I think it'd be misleading to call out a single answer to that.
Great.
That's why we pay people like Christian. But I would say the fundamental problem is that there is still too much frequency of individual advertisers. So if I just watched MasterChef the other night again with my daughter, and the number of times I saw the same ad, even twice in the one ad break, when there's not many ads in those ad breaks, I start to think that it's actually the broadcasters as well have got a responsibility here, because I think it's damaging the viewership of their program, because you start to get frustrated as a viewer. And so I don't think it's just on us as marketers and media agencies to sort this out. I think we've got to try to very quickly work out how to counsel and make sure that it's not impacting, well, the broadcasters need to make sure it's not impacting their product.
Yeah, I think everybody has got a role to play in it. I think the tech vendors can play a role in not showing the same ad back to back. Like from a demand side platform perspective, we can provide frequency capping tools that where used effectively, they can help to solve a lot of these problems. So for instance, a campaign might have been set up with a lifetime frequency cap of 5. Like it'd be a month-long campaign with a lifetime frequency cap, but it would try to deliver that out as quickly as possible, which just doesn't make sense. So what we've now got is tools that say, all right, well, my optimal frequency for a campaign is 5, but I only want to reach somebody twice at a maximum in a day, and I only want to reach them once every hour. So we can start to build that natural separation between where ads go. But we're only as good as the way, as the people who are using the tools. So I think everybody has kind of a role to play in helping to solve those problems, because you're right, like consumers don't like it. It's not great for brands. But everybody has a role in fixing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think traditionally programmatic platforms were seen just to create an auction. Just let's just auction off this inventory and create the highest possible yield. It's not just about that. That's only one part of what programmatic platforms do. We've invested hugely in making sure that we can prevent back-to-backs, that we can allow for frequency capping, even against a really, really complex supply. And also that we can even assess loudness, for example, so that there's a good user experience, and so that you don't have this crazy difference between the volume of the content versus the volume of the ads. And so actually, as technology platforms, us on the supply side, James and the Trade Desk on the other side, we're all investing a lot to make sure that this has actually got legs in the long term. Because if you start to have, if users start to have a terrible experience, then it's not going to help any broadcaster to gain significant audience scale over a period of time, and it's not going to help brands to gain benefit either. So it's in everybody's best interest to make this thing work and to make it positive.
Okay, thanks for that. I'm going to move to another, just very conscious of the time. I do want to cover off a very high-profile topic for marketers, which is obviously, given that CTV can be bought programmatically, and there's an increasing amount of channels these days. Will marketers face the same old fears around, brand safety, fraud, transparency, of the value chain, etc. Or is there more optimism that this will be, handled more diligently? Who wants to kick off with that one?
I'm happy to kick off, because I actually think that programmatic's got a really bad name quite often, because open auctions that have been leveraged from a display perspective just don't apply to the connected TV world. So I think Q1 this year, I think the IAB told everybody 56% of online video had been bought programmatically. So that's going to keep increasing. We're going to see more and more transactions happening programmatically. But when it comes to BVOD and specifically connected TV, none of that's being traded through the open auction. I had a look this morning, and our year-to-date numbers against connected TV specifically showed that only 0.4% of all of that supply had been bought through the open auction. Absolutely everything else was bought through private marketplaces. So direct relationships between the buyer and the publisher, and we're the platform in the middle that's making it all happen. But it's very specific one-to-one purposeful buying. And in fact, the biggest deal type that's leveraged is an unreserved fixed rate deal type. So it's a fixed rate negotiated between buyer and publisher, and there is simply the opportunity to apply data and targeting in order to decide whether or not that's the impression that you want to buy at that particular fixed rate. So it's not the same mechanic that has been applied to, say, display, for example, from a programmatic perspective. And it allows for full transparency, full control. There's no problem with fraud. I mean, you know that you're buying 9 now. There's no other way of it working. We've got a direct relationship with them. We're plugged directly in. There's no, there are no aggregators. There's no arbitrage. It's fully transparent.
Great. Okay. We have the venerable Ben Shepherd listening in, and he's put a question up on the chat board, which I'll read out to you. And Josh, I might throw this one to you to start with, just to give you a little bit of warning. What do the panelists think about audience cohorts for watching CTV, and whether this is incremental or on top of significant linear consumption, or is it really just cannibalizing? Any thoughts on that?
Well, typically I would actually go and ask Ben as my media strategist to give me this answer. So it's kind of a weird flip around. But no, so look, I think the evidence is kind of indicating it's incremental reach, right? Like what we've seen is a lot of the audience start to move away from linear TV, and now we're starting to rediscover them in the connected TV and the BVOD. Volumes, and in particular, probably the younger demos is where they're starting to show up again. So I think if you're, depending on who your audience is, connected TV can probably offer some incremental reach.
Great. Christian, I'm going to throw this one to you. Another question, great question. And I think this is alluding to the fact that Netflix isn't available to advertisers, right? And it's taking up a huge amount of the consumption. So other than BVOD and YouTube, do you see any other kind of like advertisable platforms getting penetration in the Australian market anytime soon?
Yes, I do. I think when you look at how potentially a connected television is used in your own home, it becomes a window to the internet. So yes, YouTube is very dominant in that, but Facebook Watch, for example, in other markets, which I think will grow here over time, simply accessing video content, you're starting to see ad-based SVOD services. Foxtel have picked one up this week as well. So I think you will see new growth. But with that said, the core is going to be around BVOD, YouTube in Australia at the very least. And sort of circling back on your previous question about transparency, and that's a big one, obviously, for us as an agency. A connected television shouldn't be anything different to anything you do in digital or any other media channel. We're very clear. We think everything should be based on a transparent, itemized model. Connected television is not different. Sometimes the technology struggles to do certain measurement pieces, but what you're paying for as a client, who you're paying for as a client, should be very simple to track, as it should be in any media, and programmatic gives you those tools, as does buying through a PG or a PMP.
Great.
And I actually think it's worth mentioning, there's some really nice research I saw at the beginning of the year from Ampere, and they were showing that I think 51% of Australian streaming households are watching Netflix. And the assumption is that it's Netflix, and then it's Stan, and then it's BVOD. Whereas actually, if you combine all of the free-to-air BVOD providers, so Netflix comes in at 51%, and I think combining all of those BVOD providers comes in at 30-something%, and Stan's at about 23%. So actually, the BVOD proposition is really strong and has already gained significant traction and really scalable audiences, considering its age and its level of progression. So just because you can't advertise with spots and dots around Netflix doesn't necessarily mean that that there isn't a significant opportunity from a CTV perspective already.
Great point. Great point. Okay, so we're coming close to the end now, as I warned you, I always have this final question, which is, based on everything we've covered today, what's a 3-second piece of advice that you can give to the marketers listening today, about CTV? Who wants to go first? No.
I can go. Look, I think my encouragement would be to dive in. It's no longer niche. I think television and linear television used to be reserved for big multinational brands with $100, $200, $300, $400,000 worth of investment to allocate. CTV and BVOD more broadly opens up the opportunity for smaller brands to access the phenomenal power and engagement of the television experience on budgets that only start from a few $1,000s. So, dip your toe in, do it cautiously, but there's an opportunity there to be involved in that living room entertainment experience that never used to exist for smaller brands.
Josh?
Yeah, well, I'd just say leave the media and the targeting to all these professionals and just make sure you tell a really good story.
Great point. Great point. And Julia?
Just don't sit there waiting until it's perfect. We haven't cracked measurement yet, but we're a lot more advanced than a lot of other markets. Oztime have got a really incredible vision. There's a project coming out of the UK, is it Project Dovetail?
Origin.
Right, so it really, similar concept, like how do we absolutely get this cross-device measurement right? We're really progressing very quickly, but you can't wait until absolutely all of the ducks are in a row before you get involved, because audiences are already there. They're watching loads of shows. They're really engaged. It's a beautiful opportunity. Get cracking and don't just wait until it's perfect.
And last but certainly not least, Christian.
I think for the common theme for us always comes back to, for anything like this, what are you evaluating it against? Is it linear TV? Is it BVOD? Why are we doing that? What is that measure of success when we get to the end? And have we set that up properly? Otherwise, we're just kind of doing stuff without progressing. And I think being very clear on what we can do today, what we can do tomorrow, and what we can't do, and that gets lost a lot of the time. And then lastly, who are you paying in that chain? Does it have to be programmatic? Do you want to do it PG through the publisher? I think that gets lost in the let's all rush to talk about the beautiful future. That's certainly where we're aiming for, but we're not going to get there unless we've got a really clear plan.
Great, thank you for that. So look, thank you very much, Juliet, Josh, James and Christian. Thanks for your insights today and of course your time, particularly Christian, who's on holiday, as I mentioned before. Go back to the kids, mate. It's been really, really valuable, and there's heaps more to cover. We could go on, for much longer. Also, thanks to the IAB and Gay there for allowing us to share the CTV report. There was a link on the chat function if you want to download that. Otherwise, just go to the website. It's well worth the read. And to everyone tuned in, you'll be able to get a recording of this webinar early next week when we post it out. And I do hope you can join us for next week's webinar on the market of the future, Friday at 11 o'clock. So thank you very much. Have a great weekend.